All righty. Preseason game number 2 in the books. How's everybody doing? Happy Saturday night. And apologies in advance for anyone watching on YouTube. My oldest daughter, who I love dearly, truly, the light of my life, was kind enough to give me her case of pink eye. So if the left side of my face looks a little out of sorts, that's why. I should probably go find a bag to put over my head for this post game. Alas, we trudge on. So the Knicks lose their second preseason game. What was the final score of this one? 121 to 112 to the Minnesota Timberwolves. It was a game, I would say, through three quarters. This was not regular season intensity, but there were definitely had moments where it was a pretty representative sample size of what we might see. I mean, I'll get into some of the specifics in a bit, but I it's preseason. We will draw results from the things that we could draw results from, but the final score of this one is certainly not one of them. And lest anyone out there be tempted to draw any results from the final score of this game, I have one number for you to look at. It's 14. It's how many minutes Jalen Brunson played tonight. So, yeah, I mean, definitely. Okay, so another piece of evidence. Every piece of evidence counts for something, even if it may not count for as much as some want to make it count for. And I think through 2 preseason games, there are a couple things that I feel, pretty comfortable drawing some not hard and fast conclusions about, but some observations, let's say. Observation number 1. Let's start on the good side. Mitchell Robinson, through 2 preseason games, I think he looks absolutely outstanding. I think he's been the most consistent Knick through 2 preseason games. Not that any of us should expect otherwise from Mitch at this point. But he just looks like a guy who is he's fully come into his own. I mean, he was great last year. He unfortunately missed 20 whatever games, 27, 28 games, whatever he missed. But he was really good this year. He looks even better this year. He's a guy that I think you could say consistently from year to year, and now he's in year 6, has gotten better every season. It looks like he's about to have the best season of his career, and the Knicks need that. Because I'll try to go from like good to bad. On the downside, I was thinking about it, just watching this team against the Celtics in the first preseason game and now this, and just it's not even about anything that we've seen so far in the preseason, but it's just simple math, which is how does a team that has 3 either questionable or just outright not very good at times defensive players in its starting lineup, how can they defend at an adequate level? Especially when it looks like, I mean, we know Jalen Brunson, Julius Randle are going to get a lot of minutes. RJ Barrett, who has had an up and down career defensively. He's had moments where he's looked really good defensively. He has moments where he just doesn't look very good defensively. Again, this is where it's like, it's preseason. I'm not going to judge RJ or Jalen Brunson or Julius Randle about the fact that they are not locked in on the defensive end of the floor. But, it is not, I don't think we're ever going to get to a point where defense is a strength of the starting unit, as it were. And, I just wonder what they will be capable, if they're really ever going to be capable of locking into a point where they could be a top 10 defense. Because I mean, I think that should be the goal. That should be the goal for almost any team in the league. Any team in the league, if you try hard enough, you could be a top 10 defense. Almost any team. I don't think they need to be top 10, probably top 12. Maybe at the very least, I'd love for them to get back in the top half of the league. That would be a really nice accomplishment. Can they do it? Can they do it? I think that's a big question for me. Again, I'm not basing that off of this game or the first 2 games, but just like those guys are going to play a lot of minutes, and there's going to be a lot of portions of the game where like 2 of them are on the floor or 3 of them are on the floor. So something to think about. Let's get back to the good side. I just mentioned RJ Barrett. I thought, again, outstanding game for him. I thought he played really well in the first game. Even though he didn't shoot well, I thought his process was great. I thought he looked good against the Celtics, and he followed that up tonight more just like a parade to the free throw line. I know he finally missed a few free throws there. But it, from a processing standpoint, like, look, it's not always going to be pretty for RJ. We're not always going to be thrilled with the result of every shot. He will occasionally put up a shot that maybe doesn't look great. We know this. But again, I'll use the word for the third time in like a minute. From a processing standpoint, are the shots good? Is he being physical in the right ways? And that's been the most encouraging thing for me with him so far, is if he could, we always talk about all the different areas that RJ can improve and get more consistent in, from a shooting standpoint, from a defensive standpoint, from, again, a processing standpoint. One of the main ones is, can he finally figure out a way to use that size and be physical with his size against the sorts of guys who are going to be defending him to his advantage and really make it a real strength. And he's been doing that. I thought that was incredibly impressive from him tonight. He's playing confident. You love to see it. And again, it shouldn't be surprised because he had a whole summer with Team Canada that went really well for him. So love what we're seeing out of RJ so far. Very, very, very big positive for him. And this isn't a good or a bad thing, but again, another observation is it seems like Thibodeau is once again going to ride with units that do not feature either one of Jalen Brunson and Julius Randle. And we talk about all manner of nonsense when we go over this team and analyze what they could be and what they might be. The most basic question one of the most basic questions for the Knicks is, like, how are they going to score when Jalen Brunson's not on the court? And that was, I'm not going to say always a struggle for them last season. I mean, his off-court offensive rating number was, or when the Knicks offensive rating number when Brunson was off the court was still decent. It wasn't bad by any stretch of the imagination. That said, they are a team that won 47 games because of their offense, not their defense. And their offense needed to be really special to do that. And they scored 7 more points per 100 possessions when Brunson was on the floor. He just draws so much attention that when he's out there, it makes life easier for RJ or Quickly or literally any player you want to name, just because of his presence. And credit to him for that. And when you take him out of the equation, it's like, okay, well, who's the best player left? That's why I found it interesting that Thibs started off the second half. Now, obviously, he wanted to get Brunson rest and doesn't want to push Brunson in the preseason. But we saw in the third quarter, basically almost 8 minutes of Emmanuel Quickly with the rest of the starting five in place of Jalen Brunson. And, I wonder how much Thibs is going to lean on that. So IQ with Julius and RJ versus in the there were another portion of the game because Julius left at 4:20, and then he went with IQ and RJ for the rest of the second quarter, or rest of the third quarter, excuse me, just the two of them. And we saw that look obviously also to end the first quarter, because something that didn't happen a lot last year. Brunson and Julius checked out of the game together at the same time with I want to say, yeah, for midway through the first. So 4:51 left in the first quarter. So yeah, I think he's going to keep trying to. I mean, it should work, right? Emmanuel Quickly plus RJ Barrett plus shooting should work. A little bit of the time they were together in this game was, again, with Sims at the 4. I'm sure that's going to be another topic of conversation. It's still not something I'm really. I don't think it's that big of a deal. I think this is, again, one of those things where he's throwing shit against the wall and he's seeing if it sticks, because you're not going to do Sims at the 4 in the regular season if you don't feel comfortable with it. And I think the decision-making process now for the coaching staff is, can we feel comfortable with Sims at the 4? Through 2 preseason games, I'm not sure we've seen enough to feel like that's a look that they could go to, especially when, again, if it's going to be in backup units where you don't have Jalen Brunson on the floor, and especially if you don't have Brunson and Randle, because obviously Randle's not going to be in there because Sims is going to be in for him if he's playing the 4, then you need all the spacing you could get. I think for RJ and Quickly to be able to do what they do and be effective together as like a leading offensive duo. Again, we're talking about something that the Knicks are going to go to for 6, 7, 8, 9 minutes a game. Quickly and RJ without Brunson or Randall. If that may not even be that. But again, just notable observation. It seems like something they want to get more evidence of. Trying to think of more like good. I didn't really know. I mean, Julius Randle. We'll go. I guess we'll go to the downside. Randle was not good tonight. I don't care. He looks healthy, and that is the most important thing. I didn't think anyone else really looked bad. I thought, it was nice to see Dante DiVincenzo get in there. Watching him, they really need his presence. Defensively. I mean, the thing with this team is like, outside of the three guys I mentioned, everybody else is a good defender. Mitchell Robinson, you could argue, is a great defender. I think Grimes has it in him to be a great defender for his size. Josh Hart, I think, has it in him to be obviously an above average defender, again, for his size, maybe a little bit higher than his size. But like, they don't, again, it's just a numbers game. It's like when you have multiple guys on defense who are just that's not their strength. What can you do when you don't have that one big time perimeter defender who could really just, jam up what the opposing team is trying to do? And they don't really have that guy, but then again, there aren't, how many of those guys are there in the league? Very few. So, nice to see DiVincenzo. Nice to see Josh Hart get out there. Again, Josh Hart only played 8 minutes. Clearly, they were not going for the win here. Don't need Josh Hart diving into the stands anymore in the preseason, or at all, actually. And yeah, I mean, everything else was fine. Nice to see Grimes put the ball on the floor. One thing I did notice with all of New York's shooters in big air quotes there, tonight, it seemed like there was a real emphasis, for as much as Minnesota shot the lights out of the ball far more than the Knicks did. I did think the Knicks, anytime they had an open look, for the most part, they fired away without hesitation. Obviously, Fournier, we'll talk about in a second. Fournier was doing it. Grimes was doing it. RJ had a moment where he didn't hesitate. There were, and right on down to Deuce McBride at the end of the game. Good to see Deuce hitting some shots. Again, that's important for him to show that in the final minutes. Yeah, so that was good. And Fournier. Let's end with Fournier, because he's hasn't gone great for him here through 2 years, right? And I really do kind of want to say through no fault of his own, because again, like we said it all throughout his first season here, like what they got from Fournier, if you've watched Fournier's career, like this is who Evan Fournier is. This is what we should have expected. It just did not jive with this team, because they kind of have to walk a tightrope in terms of the sort of players that they bring in and who they mix and match with their other guys. The beginning of last year, just the shot never came around, and then Grimes came back, and we know what happened next. Like, it was nice to see him out there tonight, reminding everybody, like, hey, man, I'm still a good NBA player. It might not have worked on this team, but it'll work somewhere. I was really happy to see that. And like, again, I think I said it the other night. I'll say it again now. Barring something shocking, rosters are set. I don't think that there's going to be a trade like before next week, or whatever, a week and a half from now. I don't see it. And the fact that Thibs has given for, like, I feel like we all were kind of in the offseason being like, so if one of the main 9 guys goes down, like, is it Deuce that's automatically going to get those minutes? Is it Sims maybe? Is it Isaiah Roby? All these different theories. Is it one of like the other guys who I didn't even get time tonight. DeQuan Jeffries. That's who I was searching for a name. That was the name. Maybe it's just like, hey, let's go with the guy who's clearly the best NBA player out of that group, and it's Evan Fournier. Because I got a column coming out for the newsletter this week talking about, like, look, like there may be some fretting going on over minutes. Like, guys are gonna miss time, and if guys miss time, and that's the thing about Fournier, is he's always been a guy who's played a lot of minutes. So if somebody misses time and they need someone to step in for, a 5 or 6 minute stint each half, I mean, can Fournier do that? Can he adjust to be that guy, that kind of like off the bench, just like, again, I'm playing a dozen minutes tonight. Can I fire up 8 threes in those? Well, maybe not 8, but like, anytime anybody leaves me open behind the arc, and am I comfortable firing away, and am I going to get good results out of that? And tonight was a really good sign as far as that concerned. So who knows? Maybe Evan Fournier, maybe his days of playing an important role for the Knicks are not over yet. That's really it. I'm trying to think, like, what else is there to say about this? Like, I'll end by saying, like, it would be nice before the season opener to see this team, like, as a collective group, have like a 5-minute stretch. Maybe that's asking too much. Like a 3-minute stretch where they lock in defensively against good opposition. That would be encouraging. But other than that, I think what we've seen so far is encouraging. It's fine. And I think this team is going to be more or less what the majority of people expect them to be. So with that, we'll open it up to Super Chats and any other questions you guys have. I have no idea how many people are watching tonight. It's a freaking Saturday at 10 o'clock. I hope people are out doing something more fun than watching my old ass. But we could talk about Cat if you want. I'm sure he'll probably come up because he was in the news. And anything else anybody wants to talk about. All right, Busy, my main man, Busy starts us off. Not going to be around for the post game, but okay, so I guess you'll catch this on the pod tomorrow. But judging what I saw early in the first quarter, my man Frank from Patreon is going to owe RJ an apology. Man. Yeah. It's you can't have expected anything better from RJ to start this season. Literally, you can't or start the preseason. You can't expect any more. My only worry, and this isn't a worry with RJ directly, but you can, and there are people who do blame his inconsistency over the years at times on the fact that he just isn't as comfortable being a third option. And what was happening in the beginning of the game when he was like lighting the world on fire? Well, he had the ball a lot and he was making things happen with the ball. And he got a chance to do that. And I will continually worry about how many stretches of games he will have, where he gets to do that, specifically in the starting lineup, because that's the thing of it, right? We know in the backup units when Brunson and probably Randall are not on the floor, we know he's going to get opportunities then, but those opportunities aren't probably going to be as beneficial because you don't have a Brunson and or a Randall there to sop up attention. But when he is on the floor with those guys and they are sopping up more attention, is he going to actually, be able to get the usage he needs? So it's I don't know if it's catch-22. Is that the appropriate turn of phrase there? But that's overthinking it. Great start to the preseason from RJ for sure. Thanks, Busy. Appreciate you as always. Next up, Robert Cross, of course. How could we have a post game without Robert Cross? This is going to be a long season for all you RJ haters. I have receipts for 4 years. You're welcome. Hashtag 53 wins. I would like if someone like college was ever like, hey Macri, we see you're doing your thing for Knicks Film School. Come and teach a class on like sports media or something. That obviously I'm not qualified to do that, to be clear. But if like some jackass university was ever, that would be actually the university that would hire me. It would be Jackass University. They could pay me in I don't know, merchandise from their campus store. I could just say Jackass on it. I would wear it all the time. Anyway, if I was going to teach like a dissertation or something in anything, I would do it on the concept of receipts. Because if a player is like, if there are receipts, it's usually because people have said bad things about someone. Now, sometimes people say bad things and not nice things about somebody, even though the player is like universally really considered really good or is really good most of the time. Most of the time, however, when people say things like, oh, I'm tired of this guy doing X, Y, or Z, or I wish he was better at this thing, it's because they aren't as good as we would like them to be. And I know this because I have eyes that I use. And so, like, a lot of the receipts you're talking about, Robert, are people like me who have observed things with my eyes and been like, hey, look at that I'm watching. That's not very good. I don't know what those, like, what is the value of those receipts? Are they the value of toilet paper? Now, if you're talking about receipts of people who are like, RJ Barrett will never be a good basketball player for as long as he lives, and he will always like unquestionably it'd be a detriment to any team he's on. Okay, that's a more worthwhile receipt. That receipt maybe has the value of like a half-filled beer can that has been out overnight, where at least it serves some purpose. Hair of the dog, as it were. And onwards and upwards we go. So like, yeah, I really that's a fascinating concept to me. Receipts, which I my understanding is that the entire internet is based on receipts. So perhaps I shouldn't call them into question, otherwise the world would implode. And what would we all do with our time? Thanks, Robert. Another one from Robert. First time, long time. It's your boy, John. Prediction. Thibs starts the season with a 10-man rotation and Fournier's in it. Hashtag 53 wins. Now, this is another one, Robert, where it's like you DM me after the last game, and you're like, I hope you know I wasn't serious about that Fournier comment. Now, I don't know. Are you being serious or you're not being serious? I have no idea. If that, I'm going to take the prediction at face value and assume that you're serious. I don't think he's going to do that. Not unless, I mean, no, I don't think he's going to do that. I think they're opening the season with a 9-man rotation. An ideal 9-man rotation. Does that mean Evan Fournier won't see time in game 1? Not necessarily. Like Josh Hart clearly is nicked up. Thibs said as much. Again, he only played 8 minutes tonight, missed the first preseason game. Like, if Josh Hart is not feeling like himself in game 1, is it possible that we see Evan Fournier? Yeah, I'm sure anything's possible. I would not count on it. You'd have to give me some decent odds to bet that, like, all things being equal, Evan Fournier sees time in the first game. Actions over words, right? And Thibodeau's actions throughout the course of his career are he likes playing a 9-man rotation. And really, if we're keeping it a buck, he really likes playing more like an 8.5-man rotation. Like, he likes going with his top guys. That's why I think it is going to be interesting to see how he juggles this season. Thanks, Robert. Oh, that is a great picture. Nathaniel Butler, shout out to him, captured a great shot of Jericho Sims putting, I don't know who this was, putting someone into the basket. But, yeah, great shot. Fun alley-oop there at the end. Dom Cappuccini. Dom, your generosity knows no bounds. It's preseason, man. It's preseason. What are you doing here? Considering the cat talk, and you just reminded me of something. Considering the cat talk on Twitter and the post, could you talk yourself into that as the big fish backup plan for Embiid? Or at this moment, would that be a depressing wet blanket considering the 4-year lead up? I don't know. So let's have the cat conversation now. I did a long write-up on Cat at the beginning of the summer, which I would encourage anybody who has a Knicks Film School newsletter subscription to go check out. And if you don't have a new newsletter subscription, you should go get one of those. I'm going to be linking it again in Monday's article, so you'll be able to go back and find it very easily. Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense that Cat is the guy that they would look to if Embiid, or for that, or if any better target, right? Doncic, Giannis, like whatever. If one of those guys doesn't work out, I think it makes sense that they would look to Embiid for all sorts of reasons, which we don't need to get too deep into right now. Just suffice it to say, there are reasons to think that Minnesota would be looking, if their season does not go as they hope. Like, let's say they do, let's say they get knocked out in the first round. First round outs aren't going to be second apron teams, not if they can help it. And unless they have reason to believe that even though they were a first round out this year, that like moving forward they will be better, they're going to try to get under the second apron. And the easiest way for them to get under the second apron by far in terms of how it would affect their asset portfolio would be to move Towns. So that's on their end. They also, coincidentally enough, have a point guard who is in year 17 in Mike Conley. Mike Conley's still very good, but he is by no means on the same age timeline as Anthony Edwards, who is a guy in the league right now who might be the ideal target for a team like Minnesota to go after, to be a starting point guard alongside a guy like Anthony Edwards. Oh, he just so happens to be backing up Jalen Brunson here in New York. Not saying I would be a fan of trading Emmanuel quickly for Karl Anthony Towns. Not saying I would be a fan of trading for Karl Anthony Towns at all. Just saying from a putting together a trade perspective, it's a very easy to imagine. And then I don't know if it would be Randall. I don't know if it would be RJ. We could have those conversations later, including whether the Knicks would plan to play Cat primarily at the 5. Would Mitch be involved somehow? Would they plan to play him at the 4 alongside Mitch and then have Cat be essentially the de facto backup center? Hartenstein's contract expires also after the season, so that's something to be considered. And lots of considerations going on here. But like, to answer your question, would it be a disappointment if, like, after all this, that's the guy we ended up with? I would have to see what else they did. Because, I've talked about this before. Karl Anthony Towns is, all you have to do is ask him. He is an unstoppable offensive force, who has flaws, and we know what those flaws are, and we don't need to go over them now. But like, to say that like there's no way that you could build a winning team around Karl Anthony Towns, I don't know that I believe that. I think there is a way to do it. Is there a way to do it with a point guard who is just as much, if not more, of a defensive liability with Jalen Brunson? I don't know. Can you do it with like one of RJ or Julius sticking around? And I don't know, is defense ever going to be a strength of either of those guys? I don't know. Who would you have to bring in? Like, or do they just say fuck it and try, empty the tank? Can they like, is there a world where they empty the tank for like both Towns and like Donovan Mitchell? Again, that's been talked about. Like, I don't know that they would have enough to get both of those guys, besides the fact that, like, okay, who's playing defense on that team? Jalen Brunson, Donovan Mitchell, Karl Anthony Towns, and one of like RJ and or Randall, plus that there's only one ball. Like, that doesn't really make any sense. So then, all right, who do you bring into, it's like OG Anunoby. There's always the name we go back to, because why? He shoots, he defends, the whole thing. It's like you run into the same issues. So I would need to see what else they did. Obviously, I think what they would give up for him would be important. Like, you're definitely giving up good players in that trade, and you're probably giving up some kind of picks. How many picks? When are those picks? Whose picks or is it the Knicks picks? Is it the protected pick? Like, it gets just very complicated. So, look, in a perfect world, that is not a conversation that I really want to have, because it would be a bit of a downer, but I don't want to sit here and be like, if the Knicks wind up trading for Karl Anthony Towns, and that's the pot of gold at the end of the tunnel, the Leon Rose experiment will have been a failure, because it's unfair for me to say that right now without knowing what else is going on. Thank you, Dom. Before we move on to the next comment, I just remembered, and Andrew told me to do this at the top of the show. We're only a half an hour in, so I'm a half an hour late. Jasso Focused at the end of the last postgame sent in an incredibly generous super chat, just like being nice and saying shout out to KFS. So I don't know if you're watching tonight, Jasso Focused. If you're not, hopefully you're listening to the postgame pod tomorrow on your feed. But just want to give you a shout out and thank you for your generosity at the end of the last episode. Please, guys, be sure you send in super chats when we're still actually going live. I can't tell you how often we get these things like right after we stop recording, and then I'm like, oh my God, I wish I could have said thanks to this person. But anyway, so just wanted to duck that in there. Thanks, man. Robert Cross with another one. Let it be said, I reported that fool with the cat post. I don't even know what cat post you're talking about. Not going to tolerate that garbage. Hashtag 53 wins. Of course, Robert, with the sensible take as always. I mean, I do think Minnesota, if I was to rank my most interesting teams to watch in the NBA this year, I mean, you're definitely in the top 10. They might be in the top 5 because they have this like super unique situation where obviously they've traded away all their picks, but they have Towns, and Towns has real value. I mean, if the Knicks don't trade for him, like somebody is going to give up real stuff for Towns. And the nice thing about the position Minnesota is in is like they already have the number one guy in Anthony Edwards, and he's still so young. And like they also have, I know he didn't play tonight, but McDaniels, who's awesome and is a great, I think will be like a perfect wing complement. So the notion that they could like get real stuff for Towns is like they're so lucky, and they're in such a good position to be in moving forward, even with the fact that they completely bumbled the Gobert trade. It's just going to be interesting to see, does Anthony Edwards take a step up this season? We'll see. Does the Towns Gobert thing work? Like, can they win a playoff round? Can they win 2 playoff rounds? Like, who knows? I wouldn't put it past them. So maybe they don't break up the pairing, but they're going to be someone to watch. But like, if it doesn't work, like, I said this via DM. I'll say it to you now, Robert. Just brace yourself. This thing's enjoy this next season, Robert. That's what I'll say. Enjoy every moment of your beloved young Knicks that have been there and that the team has not traded. Because life is, the things we love in life often are short-lived. That's all I'll say. Thank you, Robert. Dan Hidalgo. What's going on, Dan? One of the underrated things about last year's Knicks was the fact that they didn't take bad shots. Team looks like they know their role, decisive. Yeah, I never worry about that. I think like that's one of the benefits of having a Thibodeau coach team and having a team that plays together, and like there's not a lot of unselfishness. There's not a lot of selfishness. There is a lot of unselfishness. Yeah, I mean, like we take it for granted now because like it feels like it's been a while. It's been a while since we've had a team that didn't do what you're talking about. But like, my God, for seasons upon seasons upon seasons, it would be like, what? There's just no rhyme or reason to when guys took shots, like what shots they took. Now, there are offensive possessions that leave something to be desired, but you get it, you get it. And it's like, with the occasional exception, very few bad shots. So, and listen, a lot of things need to go right for you to be a not very good shooting team and be the 3rd best offense in the league. Not taking bad shots is one of those things. So credit to them for that. Thanks, Dan. Kevin Danishevsky. Fun game until the 4th. It was a fun game to the 4th. Oh, I see what Robert's talking about now. Yeah, I don't care about that. Back to Kevin's comment. Not IQ's best game, but I thought he really had his moments, especially in the 3rd. RJ was great, looked explosive. It's a flag. Put a flag on Deuce Island. Okay. Nice to see Deuce hit some shots. We talked about RJ. Yeah, quickly has like been a little inconsistent so far in the preseason. I have to think the contract is weighing on him. I have to think. In regards to that, they mentioned it tonight. October 23rd is the deadline. It's October 14th. That's 9 days away. It's easy to be like, oh my God, it's 9 days away. Why haven't they done it yet? This isn't going to get done. Reminder, go back and look at literally every NBA offseason when we get to this point, right on the edge of the season. This is when deals in this range in terms of the money with these sorts of players, with teams in the Knicks sort of financial position, this is they wait until the very end oftentimes. I mentioned Jaden McDaniels. Jaden McDaniels is, I hate to say this, but Jaden McDaniels is more important to the Wolves than Emmanuel Quickley is to the Knicks. And if they fuck around and find out, if they can't get a number agreed to with him before the season, well, there's a guy who some team could just max out next summer. I don't necessarily see that happening with Quickly. So I would argue that there's even more pressure on Minnesota to get that done. But there are other guys besides McDaniels who are definitely extension candidates that haven't got extensions done yet. And it's because these sorts of sub max, but like more than like Peyton Pritchard type of money, these things usually come down to the wire last couple days. So all that being said, I wonder if that's kind of weighing on Quick a little bit. Because whatever. He's been fine, but he's just been, been a little inconsistent. That's all. That's some nice defensive moments, certainly tonight, though. Thanks, Kev. Appreciate you. Dan Hidalgo, Mitch's shoulders looked wide. Oh, Mitch, man. I love that I got to start the show talking about Mitch and RJ because this is like, I don't lean into this as much as some do. But it's so nice that we have these two homegrown Knicks. One is starting their 6th year, one is starting their 5th year. And they've, you could talk about whether their growth has been up and down or more just like a steady rise or whatever. But like these guys are the definition of homegrown guys. The organization, like they're both talented. The organization stuck with them, nurtured them, the whole thing. And now we get to reap the, fruits. They get to reap the fruits of their labor. So yeah, Mitch is looking really good. It's cool. And that alley-oop from RJ to Mitch was there were a lot of good plays tonight. That might have been my personal favorite play of the game. Either that or I feel like the announcers didn't do it enough justice in terms of talking it up. Isaiah Hartenstein absolutely putting Rudy Gobert, 3-time defensive player of the year, Rudy Gobert, in the freaking hoop. Like bullying him off the block. Like, wow. If you're a Minnesota fan, it's probably not encouraging to see. Yeah, Hartenstein was, I thought, really good tonight, too. Thanks, Dan. Bronx Rivera. Hey, John, would it be crazy if Thibs instead gave minutes to Hartenstein at the 4, considering he could actually space the floor? He did hit a 3 tonight. Notice that. That was cool. So, like, I guess this is, to me, more of a semantics thing than anything else. So, like, fine. Hartenstein at the 4 next to who? Right? Because, you're probably not playing him next to Mitch because he's are you playing him next to Sims? This is why I think people are like, we're all paying so much attention to this thing. I think this is just a waste of time. I think here's why, like, they have Sims. Sims is a talented player. Is he an NBA rotation player for a good team? We don't know that yet. The Knicks don't really have room for him at the 5. So they're trying to figure out, okay, can we get away with playing this guy at the 4, given his particular skill set? You're coming at it. I'm not blaming you for this, but I'm just saying the way you're coming at it, and a lot of people are coming at this, is like the question of solving the backup 4 problem. Whereas I don't see there being a backup 4 problem. Josh Hart is the backup 4, or RJ Barrett, if you feel more comfortable saying him because he's taller. Whatever. One of those guys is the backup 4. That's it's going to happen. Like, I think this is far more of like, let's see what we might have in Sims in this role than we have this problem. Oh my God, how are we going to solve this problem? That's how I view it. I could be wrong. That's how I view it. So, like, talking about like, oh, could we play Hartenstein as the backup 4? They have their backup 4. It's Josh Hart. Like, I know they haven't come out and essentially said as much, but I would be shocked. I would be utterly shocked if that was not the case come the regular season. Thanks, Bronx Rivera. Should KFS's own KFS Casual Friday zone. What else? Study hall zone, right? Isn't 4 years of receipts an indictment on RJ? Wow. M's fighting words, Sean. No, it's like, man, no, there's no indictments on anybody here. That's a good argument, though. That's a good argument, right? Because if people continue saying stuff that other people have receipts about, receipt culture. That's the name of the dissertation or the course or whatever that I'll teach. Receipt culture. I don't know. I'd probably have to spend a lot of time online to get the necessary research for that. I don't know if that's where my skill set lies at this point, at my advanced age. Anyway, all right. I think this is it. We're done. Listen, we got 40-minute post game on a Saturday after a preseason romp. Not complaining about that. So thanks everybody for tuning in. If you're listening on the pod tomorrow for your lazy Sunday, your lazy football Sunday, whatever you're doing, thank you in advance. Don't forget, like this video, subscribe to the channel, leave a 5-star rating and a review and all that good stuff. If you're listening on the pod, we will be back with we have a lot of good stuff coming up for the final week before the regular season. Got a fun guest plan that I hope we'll be able to make happen. As of now, it looks like it's happening. So something to get excited about. And then we got Locked On Knicks crossover coming up in the next week or so. And Jeremy and me are recording tomorrow morning. So that episode, or we're recording Sunday morning, that episode will hit your airwaves on Monday a.m. We're going to talk about preseason overreactions. Oh, boy. Better think of some overreactions that I have. Because right now, there's nothing coming to mind. I'll think of something. All right. Take care, everybody. Have a nice night. Peace out.